the heaviest snatch balances ever. It's Fernando Reis versus Lasha, and it's a big old first for Weightlifting House. Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of the Weightlifting House News Show, the only weightlifting news show in the world. Okay, so I've gone and done something I think is pretty cool for Weightlifting House. For you guys, it's the first time I've ever done this, and I'm going to release it now. I'm going to announce it to you all now. I hinted at it on the Weightlifting House Patreon. I hinted at it on the Weightlifting House store Instagram, and this is finally the big reveal. So I've got two new things, one for all of those of you in the USA, one for those of you in Europe, and the hint, they both have a wooden heel. The first, this one is for Europe. This is pretty cool. Socks. That's not the surprise. More socks. Here we go. This is the surprise for Europe. The Velaasa Strakes have never been available in Europe before, but finally they are. So this is literally my first ever time holding these bad boys, and I'm going to be honest, they are the most gorgeous weightlifting shoe in the world right now. Wait, let me rephrase that. They're the most gorgeous weightlifting shoe in print, is that the way you say it? Sort of being manufactured, currently available in the world. So I've managed to get a limited number of these over to Europe at the cheapest price that they've ever been sold anywhere in the world. In the USA, they cost $220. These are going to cost $190. These are £144, they're €163, and I have free shipping for you if you live in the European Union. So here's what I'm going to do for you guys. There's a 2-week sale. At the end of the 2 weeks, we're going to ship out all of the orders. So we're going to take orders from literally this moment when you first see this, all the way until the end of November. Then on the 1st of December, we ship everything. Now, as I mentioned, we only have a limited number, so there are some sizes of each of these where there is literally just one available. Others, there are more. And so if you want a pair, you literally have to order really quickly. The other catch, as a thank you to everyone who has supported Weightlifting House over the years on Patreon, these are only available for the first 3 days on Patreon before they go live to everyone else. So if you are a patron of Weightlifting House, you don't have to rush too much. You have 3 days before I open this up to everyone else who's a Weightlifting House fan. So if you want to guarantee that you get a pair, head over to patreon.com/Weightlifting House. The link is down below. And for the next 3 days, these are available only to you. They go out to everyone else on Monday. So that's Europe. What about the USA? The American weightlifting shoes. Now, Glenn Pendlay was involved in Weightlifting House right from the start. He helped me develop the first ever house barbell. He was on the first load of podcasts, and he really pushed me into building what Weightlifting House has become. Before he passed away, he started his own brand. It was called American Weightlifting. You can see it written here on the shoe. And the last product he ever made was this shoe. After he passed away, I worked with his mum to try and work out how we could find the rest of the stock that he had. And literally over the last year, we've been looking, and finally we found them. Only 100 pairs of these shoes still exist, and we now have our hands on them. So once again, if you want a piece of history, if you want the last product of really an era of weightlifting, the Pendlay era, then these are now available. And just like with the Velaasa Strakes, these are only available for the first few days until Monday on Patreon. So if you want to make sure that you get a pair, you have to head over to patreon.com/Weightlifting House, and then on Monday these goes up public to everyone else. For those of you who are interested, 75% of all of the money, of all of the revenue that comes in for these shoes, goes straight to Glenn's mum, who still has medical bills to pay off for Glenn. So for one final time, we have the American weightlifting shoes, the Velaasa Strakes, USA, Europe. Until Monday the 16th, these are only available on the Weightlifting House Patreon page. From Monday the 16th onwards until the end of November, these are available at weightliftinghouse.com. We'll be taking orders over the next 2 weeks, and then on 1st of December, everything ships. Okay, let's crack back on with the show. Okay, starting off with Team China, 61 kilo He Yueji just did something remarkable. So you guys may remember Heiyueji. He is 18 years old. He's from the Hainan provincial team. And a couple of weeks ago, he set the national record in the 61 kilo weight class in the snatch at 146 kilos. That's 1 kilo over his teammate, his rival, Li Feibin's 145 kilo world record. Back in June, Liu Xiaojun Barbell also posted a video of him again snatching 146 kilos in training. So we know he's done that weight over the world record at least twice. Well, in training, he just went ahead and hit a 170 kilo snatch balance. That is 117% of the world record. And that got me thinking, who else can snatch balance 117% of the world record? I remember a few years ago I had Shane Hammond, the super heavyweight American record holder in the snatch and clean and jerk. And he came onto the podcast and he told me that he had snatch balanced 250 kilos. Now, if we do that as a percentage of the world record from back then, which I believe would have been 212.5 kilos by Rizazadeh rather than the 220 kilo world record that we see today from Lasha, that once again is 117% of the world record. It's exactly the same as Heiyueji. So this is my call for you, is who has snatch balanced a heavier percentage, a higher percentage of the world record than Heiyueji or Shane Hammond? I'm sure someone must have snatch balanced 120% of a world record somewhere. I don't know who it was, and I'd genuinely be interested to find out. So if you know, comment down below. Just as another point of interest, according to Liu Xiaojun Barbell, Heiyueji now trains 4 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is quite the schedule. But I suppose if you want to, become an Olympic champion, which apparently is his dream, I mean, it's the dream of every weightlifter, he's going to have to work pretty hard if he wants to outperform Li Feibin for Paris 2024. Moving over to Japan now, we have two lifters. The first, an 81 kilo lifter called Shisido Daisuke. He is a Japanese snatch record holder. I think he's hit 153 kilos before internationally. And he just competed, I'm not sure what the competition was. He went 150, 181, he missed 155, he missed 189. So the reason I mention this really is because the save at 150 was pretty sick and just worth some attention. The other lifter from Japan is Toshiki Senpai, Toshiki Yamamoto. 89, 96, let's be honest, he's looking pretty big. 96 kilo Toshiki, he just hit 180 kilos for a clean high pull. And by high pull, I mean, it was a power clean, except he didn't catch the bar. Like, it was basically a power. It was a 180 kilo high clean pull, plus low hang power clean, and plus jerk. And I just thought that was actually pretty crazy. The fact that he is able to power clean 180 kilos so effortlessly from the low hang. I mean, I know that Tian Tao can power clean 210. I know that we've seen Mezzo do 200. I think we've even seen Boady do 196. But 180, I know it's a little bit less, but the ease with which he did it is truly absurd. Okay, so now rather excitingly, we get to go to Georgia. And we don't go to Georgia often, and honestly, this isn't a recent lift, but it was a recently posted lift. Anton Pliesnoi, one of the people whose technique we get questions about the most on the Weightlifting House podcast and on the Weightlifting House Patreon podcast, The Morning Brew. And it is Anton Pliesnoi, 96 kilo lifter with a 178 kilo snatch. Now, whenever we get to see this guy snatch, it's always a great time. He very rarely posts any videos of his training, and this one was in the build-up to the 2019 World Championships, where he won the snatch, I think. He got 181. Fairly sure he won the snatch at Worlds, so 181, this is just 3 kilos below, and it looks pretty nice. Over in Denmark, Amanda Paulsen, aka Amanda the Strong Panda, 64 kilo weightlifter, just hit a 112 kilo snatch balance. So here's another enormous snatch balance. Now the thing is, this is 96% of the world record, because the world record is 117 dang way. So this isn't 170% of the world record like with Heiyueji and like with Shane Hammond, but if this was as a percentage of her snatch, then this would definitely be over that 117%. I think the best she's ever hit, somewhere around 88 kilos, so this would be 24 kilos more than that. This would be something like 130 plus percent, which is ridiculous, but it's not 118% of the world record, so it doesn't count as beating those two, but it still deserves a mention. Over in Italy, 81 kilo Antonino Pizzolato posts a video of a 155 kilo snatch and a 160 kilo snatch. Now to me, this looks like 150 and 160. I don't know where the 155 came from, but I'm going to believe him and just assume that there's a hidden 2.5 somewhere else. But it's not about the 150/55, it's about the 160, and the 160 looked amazing, and you can tell by his reaction that he's pretty pumped about that. Just 3 kilos under the most we've ever seen from him in competition. Moving up and slightly over now to Ireland, we're just going to stop by very quickly to congratulate Eoin Murphy, aka Girfling, on Instagram. He just hit what I believe is a new PR in the Snatch, 155 kilos. I know he doesn't compete internationally or even nationally anymore, but he certainly used to. I don't know if he's taking a hiatus or exactly what it is, but I think he's still worthy of this portion of the show. He's not a People's Lift kind of person. Also, check out the Seeker Strength podcast. They do programs and they have some merch as well, I think. There are a couple of episodes of me. I've been on with Zach before, as a lot of you guys know Zach. And they do a fantastic podcast. So if you're looking for something new to listen to, as well as the Weightlifting House podcast or the Training Mate podcast, then check out the Seeker Strength podcast, SIKA. Across the ocean now, we actually have quite a lot of lifters from Canada. I think this is the biggest Canada section we've maybe ever had on the podcast before. So I wanted to see how Maud Charron was doing, because she's a fantastic weightlifter. I hadn't seen much from her in training, the 64 kilo weightlifter, so I decided to go onto Instagram and just check it out. It turns out that she's actually doing very well. So the first thing I saw was an 85 kilo power snatch plus 2 high hang snatches. Now, the most we've ever seen from her, she hit a new PR in the snatch at the Roma World Cup 2020, so less than a year ago, at 105 kilos. Aside from that lift, she tends to be a 101 to 103-ish type weightlifter in competition. So this 85 kilo power snatch plus 2 high hang snatches is pretty good. But she also, around a month ago, doubled 98. She almost doubled 100 kilos. So she's looking really good there. She's clearly also improving in her strength. She just hit 135 kilos for a front squat triple PR. That is 5 kilos more than we've ever seen from her in the clean and jerk. So all in all, Maud Charron is doing very well right now. Next from Canada, we have Quinn Everett, aka Quang with 4 Gs _ on Instagram. He just hit 210 kilos in the clean and jerk, super heavy weight class, of course. And this looked really easy. I mean, this was easy money. This is 7 kilos more than we've ever seen from him in, well, I don't know if he's beaten this in sort of a national competition, but this is at least 7 kilos more than we've seen from him in any Olympic qualifier over the last, what would it now be, 24 months at this point. Next, and we can't really get through Canada without mentioning this guy, we have 96 kilo Boady Santavi. Now, before I get into his lift, I've had a few people message me, one very recently, then a few over the last month, asking for a Boady Santavi interview. I did one with him a year and a half ago, maybe, and if enough people want one, I'll reach out to him and see if he fancies doing another one, just to find out a little bit more about his training and how he is snatching such ridiculous weights. Speaking of ridiculous weights, he just hit 180 kilos in the snatch again, and as his description says, he's clearly pumped about it, and he believes, and I actually commented saying something similarly to this, that there really aren't any other 96 kilo weightlifters, at least that we know of, hitting 180 kilos as frequently as Boady. Now, it might be that they're just not posting it. It's very possible that there are a few other weightlifters maybe hitting it as frequently, but I don't think so. I actually do think that Boady's hitting this number more frequently than anyone else. There was a little bit of confrontation in the comment section with Forrester, but I'm kind of hoping that was just a misunderstanding between the two. Some sort of comment about Boady clean rather than Boady champ. A few maybe accusations in the comment section by other people, but all in all, I mean, this was just a ridiculously impressive lift. And then finally from Canada, we have 81 kilo Alex Bellemare, who just hit 250 kilos for a double in the back squat. And I think that's a PR. And that actually really surprised me, because Alex is getting really strong. I mean, he just snatched 200 kilos. No, he didn't. He jerked 200 kilos. Can you imagine? I think he cleaned 190, something like that. And he's just been doing really well recently. But he's always the kind of lifter who I assumed had a huge pull and then not a particularly good squat, but 250 for 2 is pretty damn good. Okay, let's move over quickly now to the US of A. We have Meredith Alwyn, 71 kilo weightlifter, who just hit a PR in the snatch at 106 kilos. That's insane. I mean, her progress recently has been great because she had a period of time where she was really on the rise, got injured, bit of time off, and then suddenly things are going back up again. She recently just started working with Danny Camargo, fantastic coach. Camargo, Ollie Camargo. Ollie, let me just check that one for you. Okay, that's it. Okay, it's ollieconcepts.com. I was just mixing that up with his Instagram, which I think is Camargo Ollie. Something like that. I should have known those, they just slipped my mind. But anyway, she's doing fantastically well with him. Of course, he was the person who brought up Matty Rogers to such a high level so quickly. So clearly he knows what he's doing. And with Meredith, he clearly knows what he's doing. I mean, even just in terms of the way that she moves, if you watch these lifts from the side, that bar is sweeping back in off the floor, maybe better than I've ever seen from Meredith. Prior to this, the most we'd ever seen from Meredith in competition, again from the Roma World Cup, there were a lot of PRs back at that competition, was 103 kilos. Next we have Nathan Damron, 96 kilo weightlifter, who is looking pretty good. He started training again with Cal Strength, looks like he's getting back to it, and he's actually at Cal Strength lifting. He just hit a 250 kilo front squat like nobody's business, 150 kilo snatch, 190 clean and jerk, so 90-ish% of his best in those lifts, just a fraction over. And then one of the fastest 250 kilo back squat doubles you may ever see in your life. K9 is looking amazing. 140 kilos in the block clean, 146 kilos for a PR in the jerk. I really didn't expect this from her. She's had a tough year. She's had injuries. She's had operations. She hasn't been hitting the same numbers that we've seen her do. And she's actually been hitting slightly less numbers than we've seen from some of her competitors nationally. But with just a couple of weeks to go before, I think it's USA Nationals, or maybe it's AO Finals. I think it's probably AO Finals actually, because we're coming up to December. She looks to be back in the kind of shape that is going to be unbeatable in her weight class. And then finally, I wanted to give a shout out to Morgan McCullough, aka Madlifts on Instagram. 140 kilos in the block snatch for him. That's the most he's ever put overhead in the snatch variation, I believe. I'm fairly sure it is. And, he's stronger than I ever was when I was... how old is he now? I'm sure he's still 13. I know he's not. He's probably 17 at this point, but I still feel like he's 13. Moving down now to Mexico, we have 67 kilo weightlifter, 173, now 67 kilo weightlifter, Jorge Adan Cardenas, who hit a 140 kilo hang snatch double. Now that's 90% of the world record. The world record is 155, this 140. I guess it's actually like 90 point something percent. It's just over 90%, which is amazing. He used to be a 73, and as a 73, he did 132. I think it was 132, 168 at the 2019 Pan Ams. No, it might have been 142. Sorry, 142, 168 at the 2019 Pan Ams. And then his last couple of meets has been as a 67. So the fact that at this new weight class, he just doubled 140 is miraculous. So really worth following Jorge Adan Cardenas if you're not. And then finally, we have from Brazil, Fernando Reis. And it is, how can we not talk about the fact that Fernando just muscle snatched 140 for a double without mentioning Lasha muscle snatching 140 kilos also. Now there are a few things to mention here. Lasha was no hook, apparently. He was no contact as well. And it did look a little bit easier. But still, Fernando did it for a double. But there are a few other things to bear in mind. Now, depending on what school of teaching, of coaching, of weightlifting you come from, there are a few things in the muscle snatch that you can and can't do. For a lot of people, you can't move the feet. Fernando moves the feet. Now, I'm not saying that that's not a muscle snatch. It clearly is. But it's just a different style of muscle snatch to the one that Lasha does, the more Soviet style. The splitting of the feet lowers the hips. It means that to some degree you're kind of going under ever so slightly. Only ever so slightly, but still ever so slightly. I still think this is basically one of the most impressive things I've ever seen, this 140 kilo double from Fernando. He truly is the strongest weightlifter in all of the Americas, the strongest weightlifter in Pan America, and I certainly don't want to take anything away from it. It's just before the comparisons go ahead, we've got to acknowledge the differences here. But regardless, Fernando is coming back. He's going to snatch 205 kilos at the Olympics. We all know it. He said it was going to happen on the Weightlifting House podcast. He's getting the yellow on, and maybe he's going to get the green on as well. 205, 245 for Fernando. I predict it. It's coming up. And it all has to start somewhere. And it's going to start with this 140 kilo double in the muscle snatch. And that, guys, is the end of this week's episode of the Weightlifting House news show. But don't forget, we have the American weightlifting shoes. We have the Velaasa Strakes weightlifting shoes. The Velaasas are available in Europe. The American weightlifting shoes are available in the USA. And they are available for the first 3 days exclusively to the Patreon page. Now, as I mentioned before, but just to remind you guys, we have 100 pairs of these. We have 102 pairs of these between the two. So for some variations of the shoes, we have lots. For others, we have literally as few as one. So if you want to guarantee that you get yours before we open this up to the general public on Monday the 16th, head over to patreon.com/weightliftinghouse and you can make sure that you get to use the private link that has everything there. Now, I'm going to be honest, I got to this point in the news show with recording everything before I realized that I forgot to do a People's Lift section for the podcast this week. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to very quickly scroll through the People's Lift hashtag on Instagram, pick out a few lifts, and just shout them out right here, right now. Okay, so I'm using the hashtag the People's Lifts. You can also follow hashtags. So if you want to see who else is doing this, who else is using it, or who your competition is to make it onto the podcast, this is how you do it. This is how you stay up to date with it. Okay, so rather than going on to top, which is the number of people who have sort of liked a post that uses it, I'm going to go on to recent because I feel like that's the fairest way of doing this. Actually, that doesn't make sense, but either way, that's now what we're doing. Okay, so I'm going to go through these pretty quick. The first one I like is weightlifting.davis, and I've spoken to Weightlifting Davis a bunch of times on Instagram and Facebook. He says that he was pissed off. He said that he was doing a lot of hyperextending today. Anyway, he just did a 110 kilo no foot snatch, and that's pretty good. Weightlifting Davis, you are 100 kilos below Lasha's no foot snatch, at least the one that we know of, his 210 that he posted. So guys, go follow Davis Smith at weightlifting.davis on Instagram. Okay, next we have E_Van67kg. His caption is 17-year-old yeets 85 kilos, 187 pounds, overhead for 3 at 68 kilos body weight. Okay, so Evan, his name is Evan. So Evan is yeeting 85 kilos overhead. I'm not sure what a yeet is. I think it's sort of like throwing or sending or something like that. He's prepping for youth nationals. He tagged me. He tagged Weightlifting House. And that's actually really good. 17 years old. He weighs 68 kilos and he just tripled 85 in the snatch. So guys, go follow Evan, E_Van67kg. Okay, next we've got Samantha Cools, I think, Kuhles. She just hit a huge unexpected milestone PR today, 200 pound clean, that's 91 kilos. The only time it's acceptable to use pounds is when it's because you hit like something that's easily divisible by 100. So 200 pounds, 300 pounds, 4, 5, 6, 7, if you're that strong. You know what I mean. 91 kilos, that's amazing. And also it looks like she'd already just PR'd at 86 kilos. So then she jumped another 5 kilos. Her coach told her to, and she made it. That's absolutely insane. So huge shout out to Samantha Cools there. Her Instagram page is Sam, S-A-M, Mac, M-A-K, 11, S-A-M-M-A-K 11. Okay, let's do one more. I'm just going to scroll through until I see what looks like the biggest lift. Okay, we've got a 200 kilo back squat there from Jorge Regains. That's not going to count. Oh, we got a 150 kilo clean here from Daniel Rones. Okay, let's do this one. 5 kilo PR. Oh no, he's doing it for more than 1 rep. I'm not sure how many reps he's going to do this for, but it's 150 kilos. It's a 5 kilo PR. He claims that it ain't nothing but a peanut, which is a bold claim. And I think it's just going to be for a double. I hope so, because he's going to jerk it. Wow. Okay, he got a 2+1, beautiful jerk, great lockout, back knee, front foot forward. Absolutely love this lift. That's where we're going to leave it. Guys, go follow Daniel Strom. Oh, Daniel. Okay, so I've spoken to this guy before, I think, on Instagram. Or maybe I haven't. Maybe I've just seen him lift before. Daniel Stromsberg Rones. He is Daniel Rones on Instagram. DANIELRONES. Sorry, ESS. He's a 73 kilo lifter, so that's basically double body weight for a 2+1. That's insane. Guys, go head over to patreon.com/weightliftinghouse so that you can guarantee, or pretty much guarantee, there's going to be a rush for it, that you can get a pair of the Velaasa Strakes if you live in Europe. The only time these may ever be sold in Europe, and they are at a huge discount, more of a discount than they've ever been anywhere else in the world. And then we also have the American weightlifting shoes, the final shoe that Glenn Pendlay ever produced, the final product he ever produced. Own a piece of history. This is your chance to do so. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Weightlifting House News Show, the only weightlifting news show in the world.